2 months before I walked into that lawyer's office with trembling hands and a folder full of secrets, I thought I knew my family. I thought I understood the difference between love and cruelty. But sometimes life has a way of showing you just how blind you've been. My name is Helen. I'm 72 years old, and if someone had told me 6 months ago that I'd be planning what some might call revenge against my own son and his wife, I would have laughed. But you see, there are lines in this world that should never be crossed. And when those lines involve a 6-year-old child, my granddaughter, well, that changes everything. Let me take you back to that night in Dallas, Texas. The night everything changed forever. I was standing in my kitchen, flour dusting my apron, putting the finishing touches on a 3-layer chocolate cake. It's my specialty, the kind that makes children's eyes light up like Christmas morning. This cake was for Lily, my sunshine, my heart walking around outside my body. She was turning 6, and I'd spent all afternoon making sure every single detail was perfect. The party was at Jason's house, my son's place. Kelly, his wife, had insisted on hosting. Now, I should tell you something about Kelly right off the bat. There was always something that didn't sit right with me about that woman. Call it grandmother's intuition, or maybe just the way she smiled with her mouth but never with her eyes. But Jason was happy, or at least he seemed to be, and I kept my concerns to myself. Big mistake. The biggest mistake of my life. I arrived at their house around 6:30, cake box balanced carefully in my arms. The front door was decorated with pink balloons, Lily's favorite color. I could hear laughter and voices coming from inside, and my heart felt full. Family gatherings always did that to me, filled me with this warm, golden feeling that made all the loneliness of widowhood fade away. But when that door opened, the golden feeling died instantly. Jason stood there, and his face looked like he'd seen a ghost. His usually bright eyes were clouded with something I couldn't quite name. Guilt? Fear? Before I could ask what was wrong, I heard it. Grandma Helen. Grandma Helen. That sweet little voice that usually melted my heart now sent ice through my veins. Because when Lily came running toward me, arms outstretched for her usual hug, I nearly dropped that cake right there on the porch. Her head was completely bald. Shaved clean. Not a single strand of her beautiful blonde curls remained. You have to understand, Lily had the most gorgeous hair. Soft curls that caught the sunlight like spun gold. She spent hours brushing it, braiding it, putting little ribbons and clips in it. That hair was part of who she was, part of her joy, her identity as a little girl who loved to feel pretty. And now it was gone. My knees actually buckled. I grabbed the doorframe to steady myself, the cake box shaking in my hands. Lily threw her little arms around my waist, and I could feel her trembling. When I looked down at her scalp, I could see it was red and irritated, like whoever had done this hadn't been gentle about it. What happened? I whispered, my voice barely audible. That's when I heard it. The sound that still haunts my dreams. Laughter. Kelly's laughter, coming from the living room. Not the warm, embarrassed laughter of someone trying to explain an accident. This was different. This was amused. Entertained. Like she was watching a comedy show instead of looking at a traumatized child. Relax, Helen, Kelly called out, appearing in the doorway with a smirk on her face. It's just a joke. Hair grows back, you know. A joke. She called what they did to my granddaughter a joke. I looked at my son, standing there with his arms crossed, not saying a word. Not defending his daughter. Not explaining. Just standing there like a statue while his wife dismissed his child's obvious distress as entertainment. The rage that filled me in that moment was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. It started in my chest, this burning, white-hot fury that spread through every inch of my body. But I couldn't let it out. Not in front of Lily. Not when she needed me to be strong. Instead, I knelt down and gathered my granddaughter in my arms. It's okay, sweetheart, I whispered into her ear. Grandma's here now. But as I held her, feeling her small body shake against mine, I made a promise. A promise that would change everything. No one, and I mean no one, would ever hurt this child again. Not if I had anything to say about it. What I'm about to tell you might shock you. It certainly shocked me when I stumbled across it 3 years ago. But sometimes the universe has a way of putting information in front of you right when you need it most, even if you don't realize it at the time. After I got Lily settled in my guest room that night, after the tears stopped and she finally fell asleep clutching her stuffed rabbit, I couldn't sleep. My mind kept racing, replaying that terrible scene over and over again. Kelly's smirk. Jason's silence. Lily's trembling hands touching her bare scalp. I kept thinking about something else too. Something that had been nagging at the back of my mind for months, maybe even years. You know that feeling when something just doesn't add up about a person? When their stories don't quite match, or when they get defensive about innocent questions. That was Kelly. So I did what any concerned grandmother would do in the middle of the night when sleep wouldn't come. I went to my home office, well, what used to be my sewing room before I turned it into my little research corner, and I started digging. Now, let me explain how I knew where to look. 3 years ago, I was helping out at the community center with their charity drive for foster children. Part of my job was organizing donated items and matching them with court-approved families. That's how I learned to navigate the Dallas County court system online. Innocent enough, right? But that night, with Lily sleeping down the hall and my heart still breaking over what I'd witnessed, I decided to look up Kelly's name. Not because I was being nosy, well, maybe a little, but because something deep in my gut told me I needed to know more about the woman who was helping raise my granddaughter. What I found made my blood run cold. Kelly Michelle Brooks, that was her maiden name before she married Jason. And there it was, buried in Houston County court records from 8 years ago. An arrest record that made my hands shake as I read it. Aggravated assault on a minor child. The victim was listed as her cousin. A 7-year-old girl named Bethany. I had to read it 3 times before it really sank in. The report detailed how Kelly had been babysitting her cousin during a family wedding. When the family returned, they found little Bethany locked in a bathroom, sobbing. Her hair had been cut off in jagged, uneven chunks. There were bruises on her arms where she'd been held down. But here's the part that made my stomach drop to the floor. The charges mysteriously disappeared 6 months later. No trial. No conviction. No record of any plea deal. Just gone. I kept digging, and that's when I found the connection. Kelly's uncle, her mother's brother, was listed as a wealthy businessman in Houston. The kind of man with enough money and influence to make problems disappear. The kind of man who could protect his family's reputation, even when that family included someone who hurt children. I sat there in my little office until the sun came up, staring at that computer screen. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely hold my coffee cup. Because suddenly, everything made horrible sense. The way Kelly sometimes looked at Lily when she thought no one was watching, not with love or affection, but with something colder. The way she volunteered to give Lily baths but always made sure Jason wasn't around. The times Lily had come to me with mysterious bruises that Kelly explained away as playground accidents. I thought about all those red flags I'd ignored, all those times my grandmother's instinct had whispered that something wasn't right. I'd pushed those feelings down because I wanted to trust my son's judgment. I wanted to believe that Jason had found a good woman, someone who would love his daughter like her own. But Kelly didn't love Lily. The evidence was right there on my computer screen, printed out in official court documents that told a story of cruelty and family money covering up crimes. The worst part? I'd known this information for 3 years and never said anything. I'd convinced myself that people could change, that maybe Kelly's past was behind her. I'd told myself it wasn't my place to interfere in my adult son's marriage. But looking at those documents with fresh eyes, after seeing what she'd done to Lily's hair, I realized my silence had put my granddaughter in danger. That morning, as I finally heard Lily stirring in the guest room, I made another promise. This one was different from the night before. This wasn't just about protecting her going forward. This was about making sure Kelly Brooks could never hurt another child again. Even if it meant going to war with my own family. You know how they say karma works in mysterious ways? Well, sometimes it works faster than you'd ever expect. And sometimes, just sometimes, it knocks on your door at 5:30 in the morning with sirens wailing and your son's panicked voice begging for forgiveness. I'd barely gotten 2 hours of sleep when the pounding started. Not gentle knocking, desperate, frantic hammering like someone's life depended on it. Lily was still asleep in the guest room, exhausted from crying herself to sleep, and my first instinct was to protect her from whatever chaos was about to unfold. But when I opened that door and saw Jason's face, I knew something had gone terribly wrong. My son looked like he'd aged 10 years overnight. His hair was sticking up in all directions, his clothes were wrinkled like he'd slept in them, and his eyes, oh, his eyes were red and wild with panic. "Mom," he gasped, grabbing my shoulders. "Mom, please. You have to help me. Kelly's in the hospital. Now, I won't lie to you." My first thought wasn't sympathy. After what I'd witnessed the night before, after what I'd discovered in those court files, my first thought was cold and calculating. But I'm still a mother, and seeing my son in that kind of distress triggered something deeper than anger. "What happened?" I asked, wrapping my robe tighter around me. "She had some kind of allergic reaction," Jason said, his voice breaking. "Started around midnight. Couldn't breathe, her face swelled up, had to call 911. She's stable now, but Helen..." He looked at me with eyes full of tears. "She keeps asking for you. She wants to apologize." An allergic reaction. At midnight. Just hours after I'd confronted them about Lily's head. I looked past Jason toward the street and saw them, the flashing red and blue lights he'd mentioned. An ambulance was pulling away from their house, and neighbors were standing on their porches, whispering and pointing. The whole street was buzzing with activity. "What kind of allergic reaction?" I asked carefully. "The doctors don't know yet," Jason said, running his hands through his hair. "Something she ate, maybe? Or touched. She's never had allergies before, Mom. Never. The doctors say it came out of nowhere. Came out of nowhere. Just like justice sometimes does. But here's the thing about being a grandmother, you learn to keep your thoughts to yourself when necessary. So instead of sharing my theories about karma and consequences, I focused on what mattered most. "Where's Lily?" I asked. "Still sleeping." I didn't want to wake her up with all the chaos. "Mrs. Patterson from next door is watching the house." Jason's voice cracked again. "Mom, Kelly keeps saying she's sorry. Over and over. She wants to make things right with you and Lily." Sorry. Now she was sorry. I looked at my son, really looked at him, and saw something I hadn't noticed before. Guilt. It was written all over his face, in the way he couldn't quite meet my eyes, in the way his hands shook when he talked about Kelly. "Jason," I said quietly, "did you know what Kelly was planning to do to Lily yesterday?" The question hung in the air between us like a loaded gun. For a moment, I thought he might actually tell me the truth. His mouth opened, closed, opened again. His face went pale. I didn't think she'd actually do it," he whispered finally. "She'd been talking about it for weeks, saying Lily's hair was too long, too messy. I told her it wasn't her decision to make, but she said..." He stopped, swallowing hard. "She said what, Jason?" "She said it would be funny. That you spoiled Lily too much, made her too prissy. She thought if she cut off all her hair, it would toughen her up." The words came out in a rush, like he'd been holding them in all night. I should have stopped her, Mom. I know I should have. But she said it was just hair, and I was tired of fighting about every little thing. Just hair. Toughen her up. I felt that familiar rage building in my chest again, but this time it was different. This time it was mixed with something else, disappointment. Deep, crushing disappointment in the son I'd raised to be better than this. You let your wife assault your daughter because you were tired of fighting, I said, my voice deadly calm. It wasn't assault, Mom. Don't be so dramatic. Stop. I held up my hand. Just stop talking right now. In that moment, standing on my front porch with my son begging for forgiveness he didn't deserve, I made a decision. Kelly's mysterious allergic reaction might have been karma, or it might have been coincidence. But either way, it had given me something precious. Time. Time to plan. Time to prepare. Time to make sure this never happened to another child. I'll come to the hospital, I told Jason. But not for Kelly. For you. Because despite everything, you're still my son. What I didn't tell him was that I was also going to start making some phone calls. Starting with Child Protective Services. Sometimes the most important conversations happen in the most ordinary places. Like a small law office above a coffee shop, where the carpet is worn thin and the secretary offers you stale cookies while you wait to change your entire life. 3 days had passed since Kelly's hospital scare. 3 days of Jason calling every few hours, updating me on her condition, begging me to visit. 3 days of me making excuses while I quietly made other plans. You see, while my son was focused on his wife's recovery, I was focused on something else entirely. Protection. Not just for Lily, but for myself. Because I had a feeling that what I was about to do would make me some very dangerous enemies. The lawyer's name was Margaret Chen, and I'd found her through the most unlikely source, my book club. Dorothy, who'd been divorced 3 times, swore by her. She's tough as nails, Dorothy had said. And she doesn't back down from bullies, no matter how much money they have. Money. That was the key to everything, wasn't it? Kelly's uncle's money had made her assault charges disappear. Jason's fear of losing Kelly's family connections had made him turn a blind eye to his daughter's suffering. Money and the power it brought seemed to be at the root of every terrible decision my family had made. But here's something about being 72 years old that people don't always appreciate. You had time to accumulate a few resources of your own. Mrs. Henderson, Margaret said as she led me into her office. She was younger than I'd expected, maybe 45, with sharp eyes and graying hair pulled back in a no-nonsense bun. You mentioned on the phone that this involved child welfare and property law? I settled into the chair across from her desk and opened the folder I'd been carrying. Inside were printouts of Kelly's court records, photos I'd taken of Lily's shaved head and irritated scalp, and copies of several other documents I'd been gathering. It involves protecting my granddaughter from a woman with a history of child abuse, I said simply. And it involves making sure that if something happens to me, Lily has somewhere safe to go. Margaret's eyebrows rose as she reviewed the papers I'd brought. I watched her face change as she read Kelly's arrest record, saw the photos of Lily, understood the connection between past and present. This is concerning, she said finally. Have you reported this to Child Protective Services? I called them yesterday. They're opening an investigation, but these things take time. And Kelly's family has resources. They made criminal charges disappear once before. But you want to do more than just protect your granddaughter. You mentioned property law. I took a deep breath. This was the part I'd been dreading, not because I wasn't sure about my decision, but because once I said it out loud, there would be no going back. I own a beach house in Galveston, I said. My late husband and I bought it 30 years ago. It's worth about $400,000 now. My son doesn't know this, but I've been planning to leave it to him in my will. And now? Now I want to make sure that if Kelly is still in the picture when I die, she can never get her hands on it. I want it held in trust for Lily, with very specific conditions about who can access it and when. Margaret nodded, making notes. That's definitely doable. We can set up an irrevocable trust, name a trustee who isn't family, establish clear guidelines for access and use. There's more, I said. I want to change my will entirely. Everything I own, the house, my savings, my life insurance, I want it all protected from Kelly. And I want to make sure Jason understands exactly why I'm doing this. Are you planning to tell him about these changes? I thought about that question. In 3 days, I'd watched my son choose his wife over his daughter's well-being repeatedly. He'd made excuses for Kelly's behavior, minimized Lily's trauma, and asked me to give Kelly another chance at least a dozen times. Not yet, I said finally. But I want the paperwork structured so that if Kelly ever hurts Lily again, certain provisions automatically trigger. Can you do that? Margaret smiled for the first time since I'd arrived. It wasn't a pleasant smile, it was the smile of someone who enjoyed a good fight. Mrs. Henderson, she said, I think you and I are going to get along just fine. As I left her office an hour later, my phone buzzed with another text from Jason. Mom, Kelly really wants to see you. She has something important to tell you. I stared at that message for a long moment, then typed back, tell Kelly I'll see her soon. Very soon. But what Jason didn't know was that when I finally did face Kelly again, I'd be holding all the cards. Let me tell you about the phone call that changed everything. It came 2 weeks after my visit to Margaret Chen's office, on a Tuesday morning when I was making pancakes for Lily. She'd been staying with me more and more lately. Jason claimed it was because Kelly needed quiet time to recover, but I suspected the real reason was that he was finally starting to see what I'd been seeing all along. The phone rang just as I was flipping the last pancake. Lily was at the kitchen table, coloring in a book I'd bought her, one with pictures of little girls with long, beautiful hair. She'd been drawing hair on all of them, adding elaborate braids and curls with her crayons. It broke my heart and filled me with pride at the same time. Helen? The voice on the other end was Kelly's, and she sounded different. Weaker. Almost scared? Yes, Kelly. How are you feeling? Better, thanks. Listen, I was wondering if we could talk. Just the two of us. There are some things I need to explain about what happened with Lily. I glanced at my granddaughter, who had stopped coloring and was listening. Even at 6 years old, she understood that phone calls about her were rarely good news. What kind of things? I asked carefully. I can't really discuss it over the phone. Could you come over? Jason's at work, and I think it would be better if we talked privately. Every instinct I had was screaming danger. Kelly wanting to talk alone, when Jason wasn't around to witness whatever she was planning? It felt like a trap. But it also felt like an opportunity. Actually, I said, I have a better idea. Why don't you meet me at my beach house? I was planning to drive down there this afternoon anyway, and we could have complete privacy. There was a pause. Your beach house? I didn't know you had a beach house. There are a lot of things you don't know about me, Kelly. The house is in Galveston. I'll text you the address. After I hung up, I called Margaret Chen. She took the bait, I told her. Kelly wants to meet and explain what happened with Lily. I'm going to record the conversation. Texas is a one-party consent state, Margaret confirmed. As long as you're part of the conversation, recording it is perfectly legal. But Helen, are you sure about this? Meeting her alone could be risky. She's still recovering from her allergic reaction. And besides, I won't really be alone. My neighbor Charlie is going to be there, just in case. Charlie was my late husband's best friend, a retired police officer who'd been looking after the beach house for me. When I'd called him that morning and explained the situation, he'd offered to hide in the back bedroom with his phone ready to call 911 if needed. The drive to Galveston took 2 hours, and I spent every minute of it thinking about what I was about to do. The beach house had been Henry's and my sanctuary for 30 years. We'd planned to retire there, to spend our golden years walking on the beach and watching sunsets from the wraparound porch. Instead, I was about to use it as the backdrop for what might be the most important conversation of my life. Kelly arrived exactly on time, which surprised me. She looked pale and thinner than usual, and there was something different about her eyes. Less arrogant. More calculating. This place is beautiful, she said as we walked up the front steps. I had no idea Jason's family owned waterfront property. Jason's family doesn't own it, I corrected her. I do. My name is the only one on the deed. We settled on the porch with glasses of sweet tea, the Gulf of Mexico stretching out before us like an endless blue carpet. For a few minutes, we sat in silence, and I almost let myself believe this could be a normal conversation between two women who love the same child. Then Kelly started talking. I want you to know that what happened with Lily's hair wasn't planned, she began. I was having a bad day, and I guess I took it out on her. It was wrong, and I'm sorry. I kept my expression neutral, but inside, I was recording every word. Because this wasn't an apology, this was a confession. And Kelly had no idea she was about to give me everything I needed to destroy her. Tell me more about this bad day, I said gently, like a grandmother eager to understand. What she told me next would haunt me forever, and give me the ammunition I needed to save my granddaughter's life. The truth is, Helen, Kelly said, settling back in her chair with that sweet tea like we were old friends, I never wanted children. Jason knew that when he married me. But Lily was already in the picture, and I thought I could learn to love her. My phone was recording every word from inside my purse, but I kept my face neutral, encouraging. Like a therapist waiting for a patient to reveal their deepest secrets. That must have been difficult, I said softly. Becoming a stepmother is never easy. You have no idea. Kelly's voice turned bitter. Do you know what it's like to have a 4-year-old constantly asking for her real mommy? Do you know how exhausting it is to pretend to care about tea parties and princess dresses when all you want is 5 minutes of peace? She was talking about Lily like she was a burden. Like my beautiful, sweet granddaughter was some kind of inconvenience that had been forced upon her. So cutting her hair was a way to make her less princess-like, I guess. Less demanding of attention. Jason spoils her rotten, and you're even worse. That child thinks the world revolves around her. I bit my tongue so hard I tasted blood. But I needed to keep her talking. I suppose children can be quite needy, I managed to say. Exactly. And lately, it's gotten worse. She's been asking questions about her mother, her real mother. Jason's ex-wife. I told him we need to shut that down before it becomes a problem. What kind of problem? Kelly leaned forward, and for the first time since she'd arrived, I saw something genuinely dangerous in her eyes. The kind where she starts wanting to reconnect with her biological mother. The kind where Jason decides maybe shared custody isn't such a bad idea after all. And there it was. The real reason Kelly had been getting more aggressive with Lily. She wasn't just annoyed by a stepchild, she was threatened by the possibility of losing control over Jason's life. I see, I said carefully. And you think by disciplining Lily more strictly, you can prevent that? I think by showing her that actions have consequences, I can teach her to be less demanding. The hair was just the beginning, Helen. There are other ways to make a child understand their place in the family hierarchy. Other ways. The words made my blood run cold. But what happened next was even worse. Kelly reached into her purse and pulled out her phone. Actually, since we're being honest with each other, there's something else I want to show you. Something that might help you understand why I need your support in this. She swiped through her phone for a moment, then turned the screen toward me. It was a banking app, showing an account summary. That's my personal savings account, she said proudly. $37,000. All mine, separate from any joint accounts with Jason. I stared at the screen, confused. I'm not sure I understand why you're showing me this. Because, Kelly said, her voice taking on that same calculating tone I'd heard when she talked about disciplining Lily, I've been documenting every single expense related to Lily's care. Food, clothes, medical bills, school supplies, everything. And when the time comes, I'm going to present Jason with a bill. A bill? For 6 years of raising a child that isn't mine. $37,000 is just the start, Helen. I've calculated that by the time Lily turns 18, her total cost to our household will be close to $200,000. I felt like I was falling into some kind of alternate reality where children were business expenses and love could be itemized on a spreadsheet. You're planning to charge my son for raising his own daughter? I'm planning to show him exactly how much his ex-wife's child has cost us. And then I'm going to give him a choice: pay me back, or sign over full custody to someone who actually wants to deal with the financial burden. Someone who actually wants to deal with the financial burden. She was talking about me. You want Jason to give me custody of Lily? Kelly smiled, and it was the coldest smile I'd ever seen. I want Jason to choose between his wife and his ex-wife's kid. And I'm betting that when he sees how much money is at stake, he'll make the smart choice. That's when I realized that Kelly hadn't just been cruel to Lily out of frustration or jealousy. She'd been building a case. Creating a paper trail. Planning this financial manipulation for years. But she'd made one crucial mistake. She'd just confessed it all to a grandmother with a hidden recording device and a very good lawyer on speed dial. There's one more thing, Kelly said, finishing her sweet tea and setting the glass down with a decisive clink. Something I probably shouldn't tell you, but since we're being so honest with each other. I kept my expression encouraging while my heart pounded. Whatever she was about to reveal, I had a feeling it was going to be the smoking gun I needed. You know how Jason's been talking about updating his will lately? Making sure everything is set up properly for Lily's future? He mentioned something about that, yes. Kelly laughed, but there was no humor in it. Well, let's just say I've been helping him with that process. Making sure all the paperwork is filled out correctly. The way she said helping made my skin crawl. What kind of help? Jason is so busy with work, you know? He never has time for paperwork. So when the lawyer sent over the will documents for review, I took care of it for him. Made some small adjustments to make sure everything was fair. What kind of adjustments? Kelly pulled out her phone again, but this time she showed me a photo of what looked like an official document. I recognized the letterhead immediately. It was from Jason's lawyer, the one he'd used for his divorce. See, originally, the will had you listed as Lily's guardian if something happened to Jason. But that didn't seem fair to me, considering how much time and money I've invested in that child. So I made a small change. My blood turned to ice as I looked at the document. Where my name should have been as Lily's guardian, Kelly's name was typed instead. You changed Jason's will without his knowledge? I changed one small detail to reflect what's best for everyone involved. If something happens to Jason, Lily needs consistency. She needs someone who's been part of her daily life, not a grandmother who spoils her on weekends. Kelly, that's fraud. That's forgery. That's being practical, she said firmly. And since you're being so understanding about everything else, I thought you should know. When Jason signs that will next week, Lily's future will be secured with someone who actually understands discipline and structure. I stared at her, trying to process what I was hearing. She just admitted to forging legal documents that would give her control over my granddaughter if anything happened to Jason. And she seemed to think I'd be supportive of this plan. What makes you think Jason will sign it without reading it carefully? Because I've been handling all his legal paperwork for 3 years now, and he trusts me. He's never questioned my judgment before. Kelly's smile was pure venom. Plus, I made sure to schedule the signing appointment during his busiest week at work. He'll be stressed, distracted, eager to get it over with. And after he signs? After he signs, I'll have legal guardianship rights to Lily. Which means I can make decisions about her care, her education, her medical treatment, everything. Without interference from grandparents who think children should be coddled instead of taught respect. The recording device in my purse felt like it was burning a hole through the fabric. Kelly had just confessed to forging legal documents, planning to defraud my son, and plotting to gain control over a child she clearly resented. But she wasn't done. Of course, if you were to support this arrangement, maybe even help convince Jason that it's the right thing to do, I might be willing to be more flexible about Lily's care. Less strict. More understanding. She was trying to blackmail me. threatening to be even crueler to Lily unless I helped her steal guardianship from me. I looked out at the Gulf of Mexico, watching the waves crash against the shore, and made a decision that would change everything. Kelly, I said quietly, I think it's time you learned something about underestimating grandmothers. Her confident smile faltered just a little. What do you mean? I mean you're about to find out exactly how much trouble you're in. What are you talking about, Helen? Kelly's voice had lost its confident edge. For the first time since she'd arrived, she looked genuinely uncertain. I reached into my purse and pulled out my phone, stopping the recording app with a deliberate tap. The sound seemed to echo across the porch like a gunshot. I'm talking about the fact that I've been recording our entire conversation, I said calmly. Every confession. Every admission. Every piece of evidence I need to destroy you. Kelly's face went white. You can't, that's illegal. Actually, it's perfectly legal in Texas. One-party consent laws. Look it up. I stood up, my phone still in my hand like a weapon. You just confessed to child abuse, financial fraud, and forgery. In your own words. With your own voice. For a moment, Kelly just sat there, staring at me like I'd grown a second head. Then something shifted in her expression. The mask of fake sweetness finally fell away completely, replaced by raw fury. You manipulative old witch, she hissed, jumping to her feet. You think you're so smart, don't you? Setting me up, recording me, but you have no idea what you're dealing with. Enlighten me. Kelly pulled out her own phone, her fingers shaking with rage as she scrolled through her contacts. You want to play games? Let's play games. She dialed a number and put the phone on speaker. After 3 rings, a man's voice answered. Kelly? What's wrong, sweetheart? Uncle Robert, I need your help. That woman I told you about, Jason's mother, she's trying to cause problems for me and the family. Uncle Robert. The wealthy businessman who'd made Kelly's assault charges disappear 8 years ago. What kind of problems? The voice was smooth, cultured, and completely cold. She's making accusations about me and Lily. False accusations. She even tried to record me today, trying to trick me into saying things that could be taken out of context. I stepped closer, making sure my own voice would be picked up clearly by Kelly's phone. Hello, Mr. Brooks. This is Helen Henderson. I don't believe we've met. There was a pause. Mrs. Henderson. Kelly's told me about you. I understand you're upset about some discipline issues with your granddaughter. I'm upset about your niece's history of abusing children. Just like she abused her 7-year-old cousin in Houston 8 years ago. Another pause, longer this time. When Robert Brooks spoke again, his voice had turned dangerous. That situation was resolved to everyone's satisfaction, Mrs. Henderson. Ancient history. I'd advise you not to bring up matters that don't concern you. It concerns me when the woman with a documented history of child abuse is forging legal documents to gain custody of my granddaughter. That's a very serious accusation. I hope you have evidence to back up such claims. I looked at Kelly, who was watching me with a mixture of fear and defiance. As a matter of fact, I do. About 45 minutes worth of recorded evidence. Recordings can be faked, Mrs. Henderson. Edited. Taken out of context. They're not always as reliable as people think. Then perhaps you'd like to hear some of it? Kelly was just telling me about the bank account where she's been saving money to charge my son for the cost of raising his own daughter. Very interesting business model. Kelly grabbed the phone. Uncle Robert, she's lying. She's trying to. Kelly. Robert's voice cut through her protests like a knife. Shut up. Right now. The phone went quiet except for the sound of Kelly's panicked breathing. Mrs. Henderson, Robert continued, I think perhaps we should meet in person to discuss this situation. There may be misunderstandings that could be cleared up with the right conversation. The right conversation? I laughed. You mean the kind where you offer me money to keep quiet? The kind where you threaten me if I don't cooperate? The kind where you make this problem disappear like you did 8 years ago? I'm simply suggesting that reasonable people can usually find reasonable solutions to complex problems. Here's my reasonable solution, Mr. Brooks. Kelly stays away from my granddaughter. Permanently. Or that recording goes to Child Protective Services, the police, and every family court judge in Dallas County. And if she doesn't stay away? I smiled, even though he couldn't see me. Then you're going to learn that some grandmothers have resources you never saw coming. The line went dead. Kelly stared at me, her phone still in her trembling hand. You have no idea what you just started, she whispered. Actually, I said, I know exactly what I started. And I know exactly how it's going to end. The drive back from Galveston was the longest 2 hours of my life. Not because of traffic or weather, but because I spent every mile knowing that I'd just declared war on people with enough money and influence to make me disappear. But you know what? Sometimes a grandmother has to do what a grandmother has to do, even if it scares her to death. My phone rang when I was about 30 minutes from home. Margaret Chen's name flashed on the screen. Helen, I just got the most interesting call, she said without preamble. A lawyer from Houston contacted my office about an hour ago. Seems his client is very interested in resolving a potential misunderstanding with you. Let me guess. Robert Brooks hired himself a lawyer. Very expensive lawyer. The kind who specializes in making problems go away quietly. He's suggesting a meeting tomorrow to discuss what he calls mutually beneficial arrangements. I laughed, but there was no humor in it. You mean he wants to buy my silence? That would be my interpretation, yes. The question is, do you want to hear what he's offering? I thought about Lily, probably at home right now coloring pictures of girls with long hair, still unconsciously touching her own scalp where her beautiful curls used to be. I thought about Kelly's cold voice describing children as financial burdens. I thought about forged documents and planned custody theft. Set up the meeting, I said. But not tomorrow. I need 48 hours first. What are you planning, Helen? I'm planning to make sure that even if something happens to me, Kelly Brooks can never hurt another child. After I hung up with Margaret, I made a series of calls that would set everything in motion. First, I called Charlie, my neighbor who'd been hiding in the beach house during Kelly's visit. Did you get everything? I asked. Every word, Charlie confirmed. Amazing what you can hear through those old walls. I recorded the whole thing from my end too, just in case. That woman is pure evil, Helen. Evil with powerful connections. Charlie, I need you to do something for me. Take copies of both recordings and put them in your safety deposit box. If anything happens to me in the next few days, nothing's going to happen to you. Not on my watch. I hope you're right. But if I'm wrong, I need you to take everything to the police. Everything. My next call was to Jason. I needed to warn him, even though I wasn't sure he'd listen. Mom, thank God you called, he said, answering on the first ring. Kelly came home upset about something. She said you two had a misunderstanding at your beach house? A misunderstanding. That's what Kelly was calling her confession to multiple felonies. Jason, I need you to listen to me very carefully. Kelly has been lying to you about more than just Lily's hair. Mom, please don't start this again. Kelly explained everything. She made a mistake, she's sorry, and she wants to make things right. She forged your will, Jason. Silence. Complete, dead silence on the other end of the line. What did you say? Kelly has been changing your legal documents. She showed me a copy of your will where she's listed as Lily's guardian instead of me. She's planning to have you sign it next week without reading it. That's impossible. Kelly wouldn't. Kelly has been documenting every penny she's spent on Lily for 6 years, planning to present you with a bill for $200,000. She wants you to choose between paying her back or giving up custody of your daughter. Another long silence. When Jason spoke again, his voice was barely a whisper. How do you know all this? Because she told me. Today. She thought I would support her plan. I don't. I can't. Jason's voice cracked. Mom, are you sure? Are you absolutely sure? I recorded the entire conversation, Jason. I have proof of everything. Oh God. Oh my God. What have I done? What have I let happen to my daughter? For the first time in weeks, I heard real emotion in my son's voice. Not defensiveness, not excuses, but genuine horror at what he'd allowed into his child's life. Jason, listen to me. Kelly's uncle is trying to fix this situation the same way he fixed her assault charges 8 years ago. They're going to offer me money to keep quiet, and when I refuse, they're going to try other methods. Other methods? Wealthy people don't stay wealthy by letting problems expose them. I need you to take Lily somewhere safe. Tonight. Don't tell Kelly where you're going. Where should I go? Remember your friend David from college? The one who moved to Austin? Take Lily there. Stay off social media, pay with cash, keep your phones turned off except to call me once a day. Mom, you're scaring me. Good, I said. You should be scared. Because in 48 hours, I'm either going to destroy Kelly Brooks completely, or she's going to destroy me. Either way, I need to know Lily is safe. What happens in 48 hours? I looked at the recording app on my phone, still holding Kelly's confessions like a loaded weapon. In 48 hours, everyone in Dallas is going to know exactly what kind of monster Kelly Brooks really is. You know that feeling when you realize someone has been in your house while you were gone? That creeping sensation that things aren't quite where you left them, that invisible hands have been touching your most private spaces? That's exactly what I felt when I walked into my home after dropping Jason and Lily off at a hotel downtown. The front door was locked, just like I'd left it. The security system was still armed. But something was wrong. Call it 72 years of intuition, or maybe just the paranoia that comes with knowing you've made dangerous enemies, but I could feel it the moment I stepped inside. My living room looked normal at first glance. Same throw pillows on the couch, same family photos on the mantel, same stack of library books on the coffee table. But the books were stacked differently. The edges weren't aligned the way I always left them, and the top book, a mystery novel I'd been reading, was turned slightly sideways. Someone had been here. Someone had been searching through my things. I moved through the house slowly, carefully, noting every small detail that was out of place. In my bedroom, the jewelry box on my dresser had been opened and closed, but not quite correctly. The little ballerina inside was facing the wrong direction. In my home office, my filing cabinet drawers had been pulled out and pushed back in, but the bottom drawer was sticking out just a fraction of an inch more than the others. They'd been looking for something. But what? Then I remembered the recording equipment Margaret Chen had given me. A backup recording device, smaller than a matchbox, that I'd hidden in my home office safe behind a family photo. If someone had been searching my house, that's what they were after. My hands shook as I moved the photo and opened the safe. Everything was still there, the backup recorder, copies of Kelly's court records, my updated will documents, and a USB drive containing copies of everything I'd recorded at the beach house. But as I reached for the USB drive to check if it was still intact, I heard it. The soft creak of a floorboard behind me. I turned around slowly, my heart hammering against my ribs, expecting to see Robert Brooks or one of his hired men standing in my office doorway. Instead, I saw Jason. Jesus, Mom, he gasped, clutching his chest. You scared me to death. I've been calling your name since I got here. How did you get in? I asked, my voice shaky with adrenaline. You gave me a key, remember? For emergencies? Jason looked around my office, taking in the open safe, the scattered documents. What's all this? Someone broke into my house, I said. They were searching for something. Are you sure? Maybe you just forgot how you left things? I showed him the jewelry box, the filing cabinet, the stack of books. Jason's face grew pale as he realized I was right. We need to call the police, he said. No. No police. Not yet. Mom, someone broke into your house. They could have hurt you, they could have. They weren't here to hurt me, Jason. They were here to find evidence. Evidence I have about Kelly. Jason sat down heavily in my desk chair, running his hands through his hair. This is insane. This whole situation is completely insane. Where's Lily? Safe. I checked her into the hotel under David's name, like you said. She thinks we're having an adventure. His voice broke a little. She's so excited about staying in a hotel, she doesn't even realize we're hiding from her stepmother. Good. Keep her excited. Keep her happy. Don't let her know how scared we are. How scared we are. Jason looked at me with something between admiration and terror. Mom, you're not scared. You're planning something. Something big. I looked at the USB drive in my hand, containing enough evidence to send Kelly to prison and destroy Robert Brooks's reputation forever. Then I looked at my son, finally seeing the truth about the woman he'd married, finally ready to protect his daughter. Tomorrow morning, I'm meeting with Robert Brooks, I said. He thinks he's going to buy my silence or scare me into backing down. And he's about to learn that some things can't be bought. And some grandmothers don't scare easily. Jason stared at me for a long moment. What do you need me to do? For the first time in weeks, I smiled. Help me save your daughter. The meeting was set for 10 o'clock at a downtown restaurant, neutral territory, Robert Brooks had insisted. But when I walked into that upscale steakhouse and saw who was sitting at the corner booth, I realized that neutral territory was a myth and trust was a luxury I could no longer afford. Margaret Chin was already there, sitting across from a man in an expensive suit who could only be Robert Brooks. They were leaning toward each other, talking in low, urgent voices, and Margaret was nodding like she was agreeing with everything he said. My lawyer. My ally. The woman I'd trusted with my most dangerous secrets. I stood in the restaurant doorway for a moment, watching them, feeling the last piece of my naive faith in people crumble into dust. Margaret had sold me out. The question was why? Mrs. Henderson. Robert Brooks stood up as I approached, extending his hand like we were old friends meeting for lunch. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe 55, with silver hair and the kind of confident smile that comes from never hearing the word no. Please, join us. Margaret was just explaining some of the legal complexities of your situation. I sat down without shaking his hand, my purse clutched tightly against my side. Inside that purse was a recording device, a different one from the equipment Margaret had given me. This one I'd bought myself from an electronics store, paid for with cash, trusting no one. Hello, Margaret, I said quietly. Imagine my surprise. Margaret had the grace to look ashamed, but only for a moment. Helen, this isn't what it looks like. Mr. Brooks contacted me with some information that changes everything. What kind of information? Robert Brooks slid a manila folder across the table. Information about your son's financial situation, Mrs. Henderson. And about certain irregularities in your granddaughter's custody arrangement. I opened the folder and felt my blood turn cold. Inside were bank statements showing that Jason was deeply in debt, credit cards maxed out, mortgage payments behind, loan applications denied. There were also copies of documents I'd never seen before, papers suggesting that Jason's ex-wife had never legally terminated her parental rights to Lily. Where did you get these? I asked. The same private investigator I used to research your background, Mrs. Henderson. Did you know that your son has been borrowing money against his house to pay for Lily's medical expenses? Did you know that his ex-wife has been in contact with him recently, asking about visitation rights? My mind raced. Jason hadn't told me any of this. But then again, there were a lot of things Jason hadn't told me lately. Even if this is true, it doesn't change what Kelly has done to Lily. Doesn't it? Margaret leaned forward, and I saw something in her eyes I'd never noticed before. Greed. Helen, Mr. Brooks has made a very generous offer. Enough money to pay off Jason's debts, set up a college fund for Lily, and ensure that you never have to worry about anything again. How much? I asked, not because I was interested, but because I needed to know exactly how much my lawyer thought my principles were worth. $500,000, Robert said smoothly. In exchange for the recordings you made of Kelly, your agreement to sign a non-disclosure agreement, and your support for Kelly's continued role in Lily's life. $500,000. More money than I'd ever seen in one place. Enough to solve all of Jason's problems and secure Lily's future. And if I refuse? Robert's smile never wavered, but something cold flickered in his eyes. Well, Mrs. Henderson, that would be unfortunate. You see, falsely recording someone without their knowledge, then using those recordings to make accusations, that could be considered harassment. Extortion, even. Especially when the person making the accusations has a history of. He consulted a document in front of him. Mental health issues following her husband's death. Mental health issues. They'd done their homework, dug up the grief counseling I'd needed after Henry died, twisted it into something that could be used against me. Margaret wouldn't meet my eyes. Helen, maybe you should consider. I've heard enough, I said, standing up. Margaret, you're fired. Mr. Brooks, your offer is rejected. Mrs. Henderson, Robert called after me as I headed for the door. Think carefully about what you're walking away from. Think about what you're walking toward. I turned back one last time. Mr. Brooks, you have no idea what I'm walking toward. But you're about to find out. Sometimes the most powerful weapons are the ones your enemies never see coming. As I walked out of that restaurant, leaving behind my corrupt lawyer and Robert Brooks's smug confidence, I wasn't walking toward defeat. I was walking toward the one person who could help me win this war, someone Robert Brooks had forgotten about completely. Her name was Amanda Martinez, and she was Kelly's cousin. The same Bethany from the Houston court records, all grown up now and working as an investigative journalist for the Dallas Morning News. I'd found her 3 days earlier, after hours of searching through social media and public records. 26 years old, award-winning reporter, and someone with a very personal reason to want Kelly Brooks's crimes exposed to the world. The coffee shop where we met was nothing like the upscale restaurant where Robert Brooks had tried to buy my silence. This was a small, family-owned place in East Dallas, the kind of neighborhood where people minded their own business and reporters could meet sources without drawing attention. Amanda was already waiting when I arrived, sitting in a corner booth with her laptop open and a recording device visible on the table. She looked nothing like the terrified 7-year-old from those court photos. She was confident, sharp-eyed, and radiated the kind of controlled anger that comes from years of waiting for justice. Mrs. Henderson, she said as I sat down. Thank you for reaching out. When you told me Kelly was still hurting children, I knew I had to help. You understand this could be dangerous? Your uncle has a lot of influence. Amanda's laugh was bitter. Uncle Robert disowned me when I became a journalist. Said I was an embarrassment to the family name. He's been trying to discredit my career for years. She pulled out a thick folder and spread its contents across the table. But he made one crucial mistake. He assumed that because he buried my case, I stopped investigating Kelly's pattern of abuse. What Amanda showed me next took my breath away. She hadn't just been investigating Kelly, she'd been building a case against her for 8 years. Photos, documents, interviews with other victims, evidence of Robert Brooks's pattern of covering up his niece's crimes. There were 3 other children after me, Amanda said quietly. A neighbor's daughter in Houston when Kelly was 16. A child she babysat in college. And now Lily. Each time, Uncle Robert made the problems disappear with money, threats, or both. Why didn't you publish this before? Because I needed proof that would stick. I needed evidence that even Uncle Robert's lawyers couldn't discredit or dismiss. Amanda pointed to my purse. Evidence like recorded confessions. I handed over copies of everything: the beach house recording, the photos of Lily's shaved head, the forged will documents, Kelly's bank statements showing her plan to extort Jason. Amanda reviewed each piece with the practiced eye of someone who'd been building this case for nearly a decade. "This is it," she said finally. "This is what I've been waiting for. But Mrs. Henderson, once I publish this story, there's no going back. For any of us." "What do you mean?" "I mean Uncle Robert will use every resource he has to destroy you, me, and anyone else involved in exposing this. He'll try to discredit us, bankrupt us, maybe worse. Are you prepared for that?" I thought about Lily, safe in that hotel room with Jason, probably coloring pictures and watching cartoons, blissfully unaware that her future was being decided in a coffee shop across town. I thought about Kelly's cold smile when she talked about making children understand their place. I thought about all the other children who might suffer if I stayed silent. "I'm prepared," I said. "Good. Because I have one more surprise for you." Amanda pulled out her phone and showed me a text message. I reached out to Kelly's first victim, the neighbor's daughter from Houston. She's 32 now, married with children of her own. When she heard Kelly was still hurting kids, she agreed to go on record. She swiped to another message. The babysitting victim from college? She's a pediatric nurse now. She's been waiting 20 years to tell her story. My eyes filled with tears as I realized what Amanda was telling me. I wasn't alone in this fight. Kelly had created an army of victims over the years, and now they were ready to stand together. "When does the story publish?" "Tomorrow morning. Front page." "But Mrs. Henderson, I need you to understand something. Once this hits the newsstands, Kelly and Uncle Robert are going to know it came from you. They're going to come after you with everything they have." I smiled for the first time in days. "Let them come. I've been underestimated my whole life. It's time to show them what a mistake that was." "There's one more thing," Amanda said. "Something I discovered just yesterday that changes everything." She pulled out one final document, and when I saw what it was, I understood why she'd saved it for last. "Kelly Brooks doesn't just have a history of abusing children," Amanda said quietly. "She's been stealing from them too." The document Amanda had shown me was a financial audit of Kelly's personal accounts, obtained through sources Amanda wouldn't name but that I suspected included someone inside Robert Brooks's own organization. What it revealed made everything else Kelly had done look like child's play. For 6 years, Kelly had been systematically stealing from a children's charity that Robert Brooks's company sponsored. Small amounts at first, a few $100s here and there from fundraising events. But as she got bolder and more confident that her uncle would protect her, the amounts grew larger. $20,000 from a Christmas toy drive. $35,000 from a scholarship fund for underprivileged children. $50,000 from a medical fund for kids with cancer. "The total is over $200,000, Amanda explained. All diverted to Kelly's personal accounts, all covered up by Uncle Robert's accounting firm." "How did you find this?" "A whistleblower inside the charity. Someone who's been watching the money disappear for years and finally got tired of being complicit." Amanda's eyes were hard as granite. "The story publishes in 6 hours, Mrs. Henderson. By noon today, everyone in Dallas will know that Kelly Brooks is not just a child abuser, she's a thief who's been stealing from sick children." 6 hours. In 6 hours, the war would be over, one way or another. My phone buzzed with a text message from Jason. "Kelly knows something's happening. She's been calling everyone, trying to find Lily. She seems panicked." I showed Amanda the message. "They're getting desperate." "Good. Desperate people make mistakes." Amanda packed up her documents and stood to leave. "Mrs. Henderson, I want you to know, whatever happens today, you did the right thing. Kelly won't hurt another child after this." After Amanda left, I drove home to wait. The story would break at noon, and I wanted to be in my own house, surrounded by my own things, when Robert Brooks and Kelly realized their world was crashing down around them. But when I pulled into my driveway, I saw that I wouldn't be waiting alone. Kelly's car was parked in front of my house. Kelly herself was sitting on my front porch steps, and she looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her hair was disheveled, her clothes wrinkled, and there was something wild and desperate in her eyes that made me hesitate before getting out of my car. "Hello, Helen," she called out as I approached. Her voice was different, less controlled, more frantic. "We need to talk. I think we've said everything we need to say to each other." "No, we haven't." Kelly stood up, and I could see her hands shaking. "You don't understand what you're doing. You don't understand what this will cost all of us." "I understand perfectly. You're a child abuser and a thief, and you're about to face the consequences." Kelly's mask finally slipped completely. The fake sweetness, the calculated manipulation, the cold control, all of it disappeared, replaced by raw, ugly rage. "You stupid old woman," she screamed. "Do you think this is some kind of game? Do you think you can just destroy people's lives and walk away? I think I can protect my granddaughter from a monster." "Your granddaughter?" Kelly laughed, but it was the sound of someone losing their grip on sanity. "You want to know the truth about your precious Lily? She's not even Jason's biological child." The words hit me like a physical blow. "What?" "That's right, Grandma. Jason's ex-wife was cheating on him for months before Lily was born. Jason isn't her father, he's just the sucker who got stuck paying for another man's kid." My world tilted sideways. If what Kelly was saying was true, then Lily wasn't my biological granddaughter. But even as the words sank in, I realized something important. I didn't care. Biology didn't make a family. Love did. And I loved that little girl with every fiber of my being, regardless of whose DNA she carried. "Even if that's true," I said quietly, "it changes nothing. Lily is my granddaughter in every way that matters." "It changes everything," Kelly shrieked. "It means you have no legal right to interfere in how I discipline her. It means—" She was cut off by the sound of sirens approaching. We both turned to see two police cars turning onto my street, followed by a black sedan that could only belong to Child Protective Services. Kelly's face went white. "What did you do?" I checked my watch. It was exactly noon. "I saved a child," I said simply. "And I made sure you'll never hurt another one." As the police cars pulled up to my house, Kelly made one last desperate play. She pulled out her phone and dialed a number. "Uncle Robert," she screamed into the phone. "She's done it. The police are here. You have to stop this." But Robert Brooks couldn't stop this. No amount of money or influence could stop what was about to happen. Because sometimes, just sometimes, the truth is stronger than corruption. And sometimes, a grandmother's love is stronger than anything else in the world. The next few hours passed in a blur of police interviews, CPS investigations, and phone calls from reporters wanting to follow up on Amanda's front-page story. But the moment that will stay with me forever happened around 3 o'clock, when Detective Rodriguez sat me down in my living room and told me something that changed everything I thought I knew about this case. "Mrs. Henderson," he said, consulting his notes, "we've been investigating the Brooks family for longer than you might realize. Your recordings and the newspaper story just gave us the final pieces we needed to move forward with arrests." "Arrests?" Plural? Kelly Brooks, Robert Brooks, and 3 other individuals involved in the charity fraud and document forgery. "But there's something else you need to know." Detective Rodriguez leaned forward. "Kelly's claim about Lily's paternity? It was a lie. A desperate attempt to hurt you when she realized she was cornered." Relief flooded through me so strongly I had to grab the arm of my chair to steady myself. "Are you sure? We ran DNA tests years ago during the original custody case between Jason and his ex-wife. Lily is definitely Jason's biological daughter." Kelly knew this. She had access to all of Jason's legal files. So even in her final moments of freedom, Kelly had tried to wound me with one last cruel lie. But it hadn't worked. Even if it had been true, it wouldn't have changed how I felt about Lily. There's more, Detective Rodriguez continued. When we searched Kelly's house this morning, we found something that explains a lot about her behavior toward your granddaughter. He handed me a plastic evidence bag containing what looked like a diary or journal. Through the clear plastic, I could see Kelly's handwriting on the open page. This is from an entry she made 2 weeks ago, the detective said. Would you like me to read it to you? I nodded, not trusting my voice. Helen thinks she's so much better than me, Detective Rodriguez read. The way she looks at me, like I'm not good enough for her precious son. The way Lily runs to her instead of me. The way Jason always takes their side when we disagree about discipline. I'm tired of being the outsider in my own family. It's time to show them all who's really in control. The words made my stomach turn. Kelly hadn't just been cruel to Lily out of frustration or mental illness. She'd been deliberately targeting my granddaughter as a way to hurt me. Every act of abuse had been calculated, personal revenge against a grandmother who dared to love her grandchild. The hair cutting was planned weeks in advance, Detective Rodriguez continued. She wrote about it in detail, how she was going to humiliate Lily at her own birthday party, how she was going to make you watch your granddaughter suffer. I closed my eyes, trying to process the depth of Kelly's malice. But Detective Rodriguez wasn't finished. Mrs. Henderson, we also found evidence that Kelly was planning to escalate her abuse. There are entries describing plans to hurt Lily more seriously, to make it look like accidents. If you hadn't intervened when you did. He didn't need to finish the sentence. We both knew what he was saying. Kelly hadn't just been stealing money and forging documents. She'd been building up to seriously injuring or even killing my granddaughter. Where is she now? I asked. County jail. No bail. The charity theft alone is enough to keep her locked up for years, and that's before we add the child abuse and fraud charges. And Robert Brooks? Also in custody. Turns out the FBI has been building a case against his business practices for months. Your evidence was the final piece they needed to move forward with arrests for money laundering, fraud, and obstruction of justice. My phone rang as Detective Rodriguez was leaving. It was Jason, calling from the hotel. Mom, I just saw the news. Is it over? Is Kelly really in jail? It's over, sweetheart. You and Lily can come home. And she can't hurt Lily anymore? Ever? I thought about Kelly's journal entries, about her plans to escalate the abuse, about the cold calculation behind every cruel act she'd committed against my granddaughter. She'll never hurt anyone again, I said firmly. I made sure of that. 2 hours later, I was sitting on my front porch when Jason's car pulled into the driveway. Lily burst out of the passenger seat and ran toward me, her arms outstretched, her face glowing with pure joy. Grandma Helen. Daddy says we're going to live with you now. As I caught her in my arms, feeling her warm little body pressed against mine, I realized that sometimes the best revenge isn't about punishment or justice. Sometimes the best revenge is simply love winning over evil. And sometimes, that's enough. 6 months later, I'm sitting in my beach house in Galveston, watching Lily build sandcastles while Jason grills hamburgers on the deck. Her hair has grown back, not quite to its original length, but enough for the small braids she loves to weave with colorful ribbons. More importantly, the shadows have faded from her eyes, and her laughter rings out across the beach like music. The legal proceedings are finally over. Kelly pled guilty to all charges and received a 15-year sentence. Robert Brooks got 20 years for his role in the financial crimes. The charity fraud investigation led to the recovery of most of the stolen money, which has been returned to the children's organizations where it belonged. But the real victory isn't measured in prison sentences or recovered funds. It's measured in the fact that Lily feels safe again. She sleeps through the night without nightmares. She plays without constantly looking over her shoulder. She trusts adults to protect her instead of hurt her. Grandma Helen, she calls out from the water's edge, come see the shell I found. I walk down to where she's standing, my feet sinking into the warm sand. The shell she's holding is perfect, white and pink, spiral-shaped, completely unbroken despite whatever storms it survived in the ocean. It's beautiful, sweetheart. Just like the ones in the story you told me, she says, referring to a fairy tale I'd made up about a little girl who collected magical shells. Can we put it in our special box? Our special box. Lily and I started a tradition of collecting one perfect shell every time we visit the beach house. She says they're for remembering happy days, for keeping the good moments safe from anything bad that might try to take them away. Smart girl. She's learning, at 6 years old, that happiness is something you have to protect and preserve. Jason joins us at the water's edge, wrapping his arms around both of us. Thank you, Mom, he says quietly. For everything. For saving her. For saving me from making the biggest mistake of my life. You don't need to thank me for protecting my family. I do, though. Because you didn't just protect Lily from Kelly. You protected her from me, from my stupidity, my willingness to look the other way, my failure to put my daughter first. Jason has changed too, these past 6 months. The guilt of what he allowed to happen to Lily nearly destroyed him at first. But with therapy and time, he's learned to forgive himself and focus on being the father Lily deserves. He's also learned to listen to that inner voice that warns him when something isn't right, instead of dismissing it for the sake of keeping peace. What matters is that we're here now, I tell him. All of us. Safe and together. As we walk back toward the house, Lily skipping ahead of us with her shell clutched tightly in her hand, I think about the YouTube video I watched last week. It was Amanda Martinez's acceptance speech for the journalism award she received for her investigation into the Brooks family crimes. In it, she talked about the courage it takes for ordinary people to stand up against powerful predators. Sometimes, she'd said, the most important battles are fought not by soldiers or police officers, but by grandmothers who refuse to let evil win. Grandmothers who refuse to let evil win. I like that. Before we go inside, I want to say something to all of you watching from around the world. If you're dealing with someone who's hurting a child, whether it's abuse, neglect, or any kind of cruelty, please don't stay silent. Please don't wait for someone else to act. Children can't protect themselves, but they can be protected by adults who care enough to fight for them. And remember this, love is always stronger than evil. Always. Sometimes it just takes a little longer to win. Thank you for watching Madam Susan's stories. Please subscribe if this touched your heart, and comment below to let me know where you're watching from around the world. Together, we can make sure every child has someone willing to fight for them. Until next time, stay strong, and remember, never underestimate the power of a grandmother's love.